When it comes to this season, it's been one full of various different levels of drama and excitement, but last week was no exception. When it came to Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, it was a race which seen several of the points contenders shuffled to the back late, and in turn, changed the contenders for who would be able to fight for the championship for the second half of what has been a very busy campaign so far. The question's going to be, can the teams capitalize on the mistakes seen last week by others, or will they be stuck trying to run in place? We're about to find out on the Global SimRacing Channel. As we say good evening everyone, and welcome to the virtual Southern National Motorsports Park for Race 6 of Season 5 for the Bootleg Racing League's Grand National Series. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside me in the booth tonight is Devin Henry. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Ambrose, and he is using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. There's a lot to go over when it comes to this track. Let's take a look at our GSRC track guide to learn more about Southern National Motorsports Park.
Southern National Motorsports Park has a few distinctions. Opening in 1993 as a 4/10 mile oval in Lucama, North Carolina, the NASCAR Modifieds and Southeast Series made stops here regularly, in addition to the weekly racing. The track closed during the recession in 2008, but reopened only a few years later. Since that reopening in 2012, the 17-degree bank turns have seen nearly constant action. Racing occurs throughout the summer, with 16 weeks of that action featuring various late model divisions, street stocks, and Legends machines. Regional series make stops here, mostly consisting of cars in the super late model and late model varieties, but even some truck series make stops here, adding to the diverse car type that turns laps. The Thanksgiving Classic is one of the premier events at Southern National, with everything from super lates to trucks to bandoleros having races here over a 3-day span. Now it's time to watch some racing in front of 4,500 strong at Southern National.
That's a look at your GSRC track guide for Southern National Motorsports Park. Now let's bring my broadcast partner Devin Henry. We were talking about this just prior to tonight. This is one of your favorite tracks on the service, and it's also one that could put on some great racing, to say the very least, in these cars.
Oh, absolutely, Justin. And the reason why this is one of my favorites is because when you look at some of these long straightaway, highly banked corner short tracks, this is arguably my favorite. The way that you really dive down deep into the corners here on entering to the 17 degrees of banking, and then the throttle control that's necessary on exit here, just a little bit too much, and you're going to burn those rear tires up, and you are spinning around. So even though it's one of those really fun, it almost feels high-speed short tracks, it takes so much finesse that someone like me lacks to really get the most out of your car every lap.
Absolutely, and it's going to be a race too, I think, where we may see anywhere from minimal caution flags to plenty of them. That's what's happened in the past during this racetrack. We'll get into that in a little bit more. Now, when it comes to the Drivers' Championship, things took a turn as talked about at Nashville, because J.R. Shepard, Kenny Kibby, Justin Morton were all involved in late race incidents. That seen J.R. Shepard and Kenny Kibby be separated by just 1 point apiece exiting that race. James Lowe, who is about 20 points back, closed the gap to 9 points as a result. But Justin Morton was shuffled to 4th, 10 points back. Ruben Ortiz rounds out the top 5, 20 points back. A massive swing in the standings, to say the very least. And all of that and more makes things even more entertaining for today's format, since guess what? For our details, guess which drivers didn't finish in the inversion spots? 3 of those 4 championship contenders, Devin.
Yeah, and that's going to be rough. So Kenny Kibby last week finished in 10th, J.R. Shepard in 12th. If everyone who finished ahead of them last week shows up today, that means that Kibby and Shepard are starting outside of rows 5 and 6 tonight. Justin Morton outside of row 7. So I know guys like J.R. Shepard are used to starting P8, but if they're having to start in rows 5, 6, and 7 on the outside lane, this is going to be one of the furthest back that we've seen just a single one of them come from, much less all 3 of your major championship competitors. But for those of you guys new to this series, we're in round number 6 of 11 this season. 100 lap races here at these short tracks, but not a single tire change. And Justin, that's going to be a big deal for these guys coming from the back. you're going to have to conserve that rubber while you get through the field. And oh yeah, you only get that one fast repair if something happens to go wrong on your way out.
It's going to be intriguing, and keep in mind it is a later night race with the lights on across the racetrack. In-sim time is just past 8:20 p.m. In-sim day is iRacing day. May 15th, 2021. Track is actually fairly hot as well, though. 82 degrees Fahrenheit right now. The track temp 75 the air temp, and that might only get a little bit hotter with the times being recorded and the rubber buildup at the bottom of the racetrack as time goes on tonight.
And right now you're on board with J.R. Shepard. This series runs 3 races on this Saturday night. J.R. won the first race of the night with the street stocks, but then a lot of craziness in the SK modifieds. But the big story there was only 4 caution flags. They go 100 laps as well. So again, Justin, like you said at the top of the show, we could either see a boatload of caution flags. It wouldn't be surprising to just see 2 caution flags. It just came from 4 in the SK modified race just moments ago. So we'll see what J.R. Shepard can do here if he can keep himself out front. Right now, leading the way in practice.
Yes, indeed, by about 17 one-thousandths of a second at the moment over Kenny Kibby, James Lowe, Austin Belkey, Steven Spees, your top 5. Spees, of course, had that strong performance last week as a result of some of the attrition. It's going to be intriguing as well, though, on that regard of how some drivers play it safe today. The drivers who received warnings for penalties at Nashville include Brian Dean, Ruben Altis, and Mike Allen. All of them over-aggressive racing as the key word, a part of that warning. We've already seen drivers park for races throughout the season as a result of breaking similar sort of infractions.
Watching right now the 99 of James Lowe, he's the guy who, I don't know if you want to say capitalized on all those infractions there, taking home the win last week. And this is kind of what we've been hoping to see out of James Lowe. It felt like a couple seasons ago, he just kind of lost a little bit of his edge. He wasn't bringing in that consistency. Last season we saw that return, and now with a win under his belt, can James Lowe ride that momentum? We'll start potentially up to 8th tonight, or as far back as 8th, I guess I should say. But can we now see James Lowe, that he is 100% in this championship fight, have the ability to gain momentum after last week's win and keep his name in the championship hunt this year?
And it's not as simple as ABC, though. That's the thing, because, you know, you have to be able to outscore both Shepard and Kibby right now, bit by bit. It is possible, but he has to do it on average by about a couple points a race.
And if everyone from last week shows up today, the way that the field gets inverted and the way that the field is set due to last week's finishing order, the top 4 in points would start row 4, 5, 6, and 7 on the outside lane. Though in that case, your top 4 championship competitors are going to be duking it out early with one another, as we sometimes see due to the inversion, but now they're coming from even further back. And yeah, the A to B to C to D gets even more difficult when you equate on a short track. There can be incidents where you have no control when you're sitting in 8th what happens in front of you and if you can avoid a wreck.
Going on with Kenny Kibby, by the way, throughout this practice is still in second on the board with a 14.658, as talked about. Bit of a new look as well for him, bringing some flashes of blue on top of that orange and black for this race tonight.
Yeah, always thought that black and orange number 14 for NG Kibbs here was really slick, but it was also kind of dark. I like the introduction of a new color onto this paint scheme. I'd almost like to see it put on the old paint scheme maybe, just because that one was so sharp, but you can definitely see that 14 a little bit louder, if you will, than the rest of them, that Nocturnal Gaming number 14.
And also that little bit of a louder edge to the 14 number. If you look at the number 4 with a bit of a teeth popping out from the edge of the 4.
Yeah, it has that Casey Kane look in number 4 that you would kind of formerly see on his sprint cars and stuff like that. That's what it reminds me of, reminiscent of those old Casey Kane number 9 cars. Then he took that onto the 4 car on some of his sprint cars as well before switching to what we now know him as once he went to Red Bull Racing. But yeah, sharper, quite literally sharper number. And then you have the 55 here, a little bit of a different look as well. Typically seeing him in the blue and gray, and he's had on that orange. And I think that this is a huge plus right here, Justin.
Yeah, nice looking paint scheme for tonight. Nice and simple. And also has picked up a bit of sponsors, as you see around the sides of the race car as well for tonight. One of the surprises, though, of practice so far, Devin, is Justin Morton is only in 8th in in the session. That's about a full 1/10 of a second off at the moment. He's right now among the drivers who are working their way still around the racetrack and trying to find their way towards the pit lanes.
And we see Justin, it almost feels like, and I'm in Justin Morton in this case, not Justin Prince, but he's almost like a kind of hot, a kind of cold kind of guy. I haven't really been able to figure out, okay, when is Morton going to struggle? When is he going to succeed? He has that prior win a couple seasons ago at Martinsville. And I know this isn't the most similar track because of the banking on the straightaways and on the corners, but we've seen him struggle at some tracks than he does really good at, and vice versa. So he's a guy kind of like James Lowe that you look at and go, okay, can I get a little bit of consistency out of him? If I can get that consistency, and with his speed right now in practice, if he can turn that up in the race, then I know for a fact, yeah, he's a championship contender. That just confirms what I thought.
2 minutes to go in practice. Let's talk a little bit about the expectations for this race tonight. And we talked a little bit about this being a bottom dominant track where it can have anywhere from 9 caution flags in some races, upwards of 10, to as little as 3 to 4. How do you try and make the right moves if you're some of these drivers tonight, knowing there's a big chance to capitalize on what happened last week here for some of your best results in the series?
And I think a lot of that comes down to track position, Justin, because when you hit that restart, if you're on the inside lane, you can grab a couple of spots out of the gate if you're right up on that rear bumper of the machine in front of you. And to that point as well, if you're driving side by side with someone and you're going into a caution, obviously you don't know that you're going into a caution, but if you just have that nose up front, okay, that's one more position, potentially one more car lane that you have on somebody else. And so I think tonight what we're going to see are guys go for that inside lane. I've seen the top utilized a little bit. It doesn't really become the dominant line like you might see at Sobo with the right weather and tire conditions. So if we see those guys go down to the bottom, it's going to turn into a who burns off that right front first, because unless you're moving the guy from the bottom, you're going to have to wait for a mistake or get that really good run off the corner with potentially diamonding the corner off.
So who do you feel is in the best situation to try and capitalize on the track position and in turn be one of the favorites to take the checker flag, you feel, tonight as a result?
Gosh, I tell you what, J.R. Shepard is the easy way out. So I'm not allowed to say J.R. Shepard in this instance because I think that by far he is the best driver when it comes to conserving those tires. But one guy through and through that we see sometimes competing up front can be Ruben Altice. We saw him earlier this year start on pole. Tonight he might be starting in the top 4, but he typically burns off those tires quickly. So if he can kind of settle down, not burn off that right front, I think Ruben Altice is a guy that can use that initial starting position to do well tonight. Or you look at a guy like Brian Dean. He's had really good finishing positions the past couple of seasons, kind of fell off, and tonight has a good starting position as well. We'll see if he can capitalize on that himself.
Drivers are now wrapping up practice as they've reached the final moments of the clock. And that means it's time to look at how the drivers will line up for what's going to be the most interesting grid of the season so far. Jason Menda will start on the pole today with Ryan Seneker in his second career race in this series in the second position. Bruce Pearson starts in third with Brian Dean in the 4th spot. Steven Spees will start in 5th with James Lowe in 6th position with the invert. Shane will start in 7th position. Kenny Kibby in 8th. Joe Sagawa, J.R. Shepard, your top 10.
Looking back outside the top 10, these are the guys that are going to have to fight back here to open up this race. Starting in the 11th position tonight here at Southern National is Austin Belkey. Justin Morton having to start outside of row 6. Lowell Jewell, the boss man, starting in 13th. Kurt Smith will start off in 14th. Mike Allen starts in 15th. The 44, Jeffrey Harden, will start off in 16th. And the principal, Chris Wolfson, rounds out your 17-car field here at Southern National Motorsports Park.
Again, right now the conditions just past 8:30 p.m. in sim time. Live time and in-scoring is available for tonight's action at GSRC.TV. Ryan Seneker has elected to take an end of longest line penalty, so he'll go to the rear of the field for this one. But the track has also cooled down to 79 degrees Fahrenheit, 75 degrees is the air temp for tonight's racing action. Real quickly, your keys to victory for tonight.
Well, I know I said the track position is key, but if you lose a couple of spots off the top in the name of conserving that right front, you know what? I think that's okay. At a track like this, and with the temperature beginning to go down but starting high, I think that you want to make sure that you have as much right front possible to keep yourself pinned down to the bottom with the most momentum possible. So I think tire conservation is going to be a big key tonight. So watch that 98 of J.R. Shepard. He likes to put on clinics in that exact category.
It's time to go racing from Southern National Motorsports Park. It's Jason Menda in control of the field. Green flags out, we're underway from Southern National. And already a stack up at the bottom as James Lowe and several others crash. Caution is out and the whole track is blocked.
The gala in that one, Lowell Jewell, Austin Belkey, and most importantly, last week's winner, James Lowe, caught up in that, and that might have been a case of one driver maybe taking what I said too literally. Went pretty conservative into turn number 1, and I don't think James Lowe was ready for that.
Take a look at the replay, and you'll see exactly that. It'll be Dean right there, checks up in an accordion effect.
That is all it took for 5 cars to receive damage on turn number 1. And it's really difficult to just place blame on someone there. I mean, Dean got really close to the rear bumper of Menda, so he backed off a little bit. Maybe even trying to conserve tires. Something that I'm always worried about as a driver is how well will this car stick on legitimately as cold of tires as you're going to get. And James Lowe was ready to blitz that corner, and a bumper met a bumper. That's all it took to get these cars with damage. That only one fast repair. So if you have too much damage, you might have to use that now. Otherwise, you're just going to have to try to pray that whatever you go in and pit for is going to fix enough damage to make sure that you don't have any sort of disadvantage.
Repairs being done by Dean manually. James Lowe has elected to take a fast repair. Adam Shane also has come down for service a couple times already. This caution flag in the 65. His car is also clean, but this caution means with the size of this pit lane and how quick the pace laps are, 4 drivers have already lost a lap, Devin. Those being Joe Segala, Brian Dean, Lowe, and Shane, who are all involved, all while Jason Menda leads now over Kenny Kibby, who's jumped up to second as a result of all the pandemonium.
You don't get those free wave rounds. You get a lucky dog, but you don't get those free wave rounds every caution. So being a lap down is going to completely change your race for guys like Brian Dean, who started on that front row, now a lap down. Great to see guys though like Jason Menda, Pensacola, Florida, the firefighting veteran, excuse me, for the past 25 years, and has worked at late nights on street stocks, ARCA cars at Daytona, which just ran today. I don't think he ran today though, but great to see the firefighter out there up front.
That race was an interesting one with those cars, to say the least. It's been an interesting one so far. Green flag, we'll try it again. Kibby with a great launch on the high side. Trying to clear by the 45. Gets a little bit squirrely, though, as it's still side by side for the race lead.
Yeah, I guess in the midst of that caution, we should have mentioned Kenny Kibby, J.R. Shepard, and Justin Morton, after all starting outside of the inverter in the top 5 here. Spees put it into Harden to 1.
Up the track he goes, and the caution is out for the second time. And just like that, in the span of 8 laps, we've turned 2 green flag ones.
The last time it was a driver too slow into 1. This time it's a driver too hot into 1.
Yeah, just lost it.
And there's no saving that once that car starts to rotate around like that.
What a great
That's something that the banking can do too, Justin, is when you go in high and you try to really use that banking, the rear end likes to slip out.
We've seen exactly that. We also had Jeffrey Harden, by the way, who is back from a 3-week break from work, who also spun around on the bottom of the racetrack and also buzzed his tires. But for Kenny Kibby, nearly got himself by Jason Menda on the high side. Austin Belkey electing to come in meanwhile to get some repairs done.
Menda here has quite the task. Our top 5 is now Jason Menda. 3 championship competitors, Kenny Kibby, J.R. Shepard, Justin Morton, and then Kurt Smith. So going into turn 1, you will be blitzed by 3 guys who not only are championship competitors, but in a tight championship race and want to get to the lead quick.
Take a look at our biggest movers and losers so far in terms of positions. How about a +10 for Wolfson so far? +9 for Allen and Smith. +8 for Morton. Shepard's a +7. Kibby's a +6. Meanwhile, drivers like Dean, Lowe, and Shane are in double-digit positions lost to the very back of the field.
Hey, when I said at the beginning of this show to try to capitalize on track position through cautions. This is not what I meant. But Bruce Pearson has done himself quite a way to get himself up, or excuse me, Chris Wolfson, has done quite the job to get himself out front. The middle school principal from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, moving his way through the field, and now he's in the invert for next week.
It's been an intriguing race so far, but we're already in double-digit lap totals. The question is, how long will this green flag run fair? And the last time the series came here, it was a 10-caution race, and by J.R. Shepard for the closing stages. J.R. Shepard, the winningest driver at this track in the series, has won 3 of the 4 past events here. He starts inside row 2. Menda off and away, a better launch for the 45.
This time he might just be able to hold off Kibby here. These tires are still fairly fresh, so he can try to blitz these corners more than you would if this was caution 2 on lap 35 or so. Kibby stuck on the outside. Have to watch out for J.R. Shepard looking to make an attack for second here. Menda can hold off Kibby.
Kibby's not giving up, and 1 car's around. It's Mike Allen. We're back in our yellow once more. Brian Dean is in the lucky dog position. Previously, it was Joe Sagawa who was the lucky dog the previous caution flank. This is the caution this time.
Blue 59 there. Might have bumped doors there with Wilson just a smidge. Hate to see that there for Mike Allen, who is running just outside the top 5, and now he'll have to take a trip to the back in that Oreo Ritz car.
Let's take a look from Belke. Keep in mind, he had just come around from the pit lane here and had to do this.
Yeah, that's no fun. Well, that car looks pretty clean. I mean, it got a little bit of contact on both front ends there, but that car looks. You don't need that left front fender. You're fine.
Yeah, it is a short track, but still, that is a big chunk of metal missing, and who knows how that left front tire is on the suspension.
Hey, if the car drives straight, yeah, that's straight enough. That's straight enough. That's just for sponsorship. He's fine. He's fine.
Sure. Sure.
Or at least we will find out soon enough.
Yeah, we'll see how he does when the green flag flies and all of a sudden in turn 1 there's battling with the steering. We'll have to see that Jeff going to throw back. But either way, drivers are still behind the pace car. The pace laps, should note, can be on the longer side here at Southern National Motorsports Park. In that 10 caution affair, as mentioned in Season 4, there were 40 pace laps during that respective race.
And from the Jeff Gordon throwback, constantly love it, to the constant Mark Martin throwback, how about Kurt Smith? Putting himself in the 5th position here. So maybe looking for a top 5 depending on how this race continues to go. Kurt Smith is keeping himself up there and staying away from all the treachery, up 9 positions from the green flag.
Hopefully the commentator's curse doesn't strike this time.
Oh, dang it, Justin.
Somebody had to say it. It's been a race where attrition has been alive and well. Jason Menda with his best launch yet. Green flag, already single file. This opens up the door for Kibby to poke loose. He goes towards the bottom, but J.R. Shepard now for second wants the bottom.
And what a great launch there by Menda, but now you gotta watch out. J.R. Shepard vying for that P1 spot, just couldn't quite get to it, but nonetheless, now fighting for P2. It looks like maybe in a lap or so he will clear Kibby, and now J.R. Shepard, the guy who you don't want out front, is clear in P2.
+8 now for J.R. Shepard, and he was the fastest car on the racetrack last time by, even with the checkup. More cars in trouble. The boss man, Lord Jewell, in the wall, and several more along the front stretch. And for the second time tonight, we have another parking lot.
It's incredible with the amount of cautions that we've had. I don't think anyone has sustained, dare I say, major damage. We'll watch the 19 car coming off of turn 4 here. There you see him off at 2. You see the cars to the inside behind him. Oh, and you can see this starts at the very beginning of the corner. Loses the rear end just a little bit, gets on the gas maybe a little early, and there's just nowhere else to go. And some marker brakes maybe.
Well, they are
marker cars. Yeah. I mean, it works out, right?
Yes, let's see right here. This is from Joe Sagawa, where he locked it up, but the cars are not made out of transparent glass. It's hard to see through other cars.
Boy, after winning last week in Nashville, what a day here for James Lowe. Still stuck a lap down. And with that caution, the way it came out, I think he was in the lucky dog position, but the way that caution came out, that put him to last on the field. So he will have to await another caution here at least to get himself back on the lead lap.
The boss man Lojo has lost a lap, by the way, as well, so 3 cars on 1 lap down. Adam Shane would have been, if he was able to stay out of that, be the lucky dog, but since he was in the vicinity of the wreck, he will also not be eligible for the lucky dog. So 14 drivers will be on the lead lap as a result of this caution flag.
Boy, I still love Lojo's paint on that. Really old school looking SCP car. I like that. And that.
Yeah, you can see right here, went with the rusted look, surprisingly, though, on this car.
Someone worked hard on that. That is difficult to do.
To be able to build rust with the paint.
Yeah, and then also make it look like it flows right, because there are a lot of pieces on the paint for this car. So, yeah, so someone put a lot of time and effort into that, and I think it looks great.
Boss man is now last on the field in 17th position. 1 go signal. Did have 1 wave around Austin Belke and himself on the lead lap. He was right behind the pace car after getting rolling from that specific incident and situation. But it's Jason Menda, J.R. Shepard, Kenny Kibby, Justin Morton, Kurt Smith, your top 5. Followed by Wolfson, Pearson, and Allen in the top 8. Green flags back out. And a good launch from Shepard on the high side. He tries to get the squeeze to Menda. Menda tries to pull himself forward and does. Here comes Kibby now for second.
Menda scrubbed just a little bit of speed off the corner, but he will retain the lead with a caution here. This time it looks like Chris Wolfson with trouble off of turn 2.
And the commentator's curse strikes again, this time from 6th, from 2 different parts of the corner. How about contact to start in turn 1 entry, then contact coming out of it?
The red and 17 cars, what we're looking for here, coming off of turn 2. A little bit of contact there with the 22, and just couldn't get the car back together. And that's a treacherous spot. As a driver, you think, okay, I got the car turning correctly now, but the car never really settles back up after you enter a corner like that. So you see right there, it gets unsettled on board here with Mike Allen, and takes a little bit of a lick there just because when that car doesn't get resettled again, when you get back on that gas on X and you think you're fine, that car is not fine. The rear end is still trying to lift off the ground, and that's the product right there. And again, James Lowe not getting the wave around on this lap.
Sam Shane actually getting the lucky dog. This caution, Chris Wolfson barely able to stay on the lead lap. We'll take the faster pair 2. Eventually, somebody's going to have the opportunity, though, to battle for this race lead. Jason Menda has been able to lead every single lap so far, but has had to hold off 2 different drivers with hard charges to his outside.
Well, this couldn't have gone better for Jason Menda, because when you have 3 of the guys who are arguably the best at maintaining that right front, if you don't have to use your right front because you're having so many caution laps, then you can still run the pace of J.R. Shepard to an extent, and that's exactly what he's doing, not having to worry about the burn-off on that right front. With these amount of caution laps, that might help him hold off a few different drivers, and at the very least bring him a top 5 potentially if he's able to keep that right front just safe enough with this lack of green flag runs.
Yeah, Menda is a very strong driver when you consider, especially at the start of some of these races, when he's got track position, he can hold his own in that 45. We've seen that tonight. Now, we'll see how this restart goes. Still Menda, Shepard, Kibby, Morton the top 4. Kurt Smith is in 5th. Bruce Pearson's up to 6th with that contact from before. Mike Allen and Dean among the top 8. Green flags back out. Shepard with his best launch on the high side yet. Tries to go for the diamond, but Menda able to keep it side by side as more contact behind. It's Pearson and Kurt Smith getting hooked around, and we're under yellow yet again.
And I think we have a new leader potentially. I think J.R. Shepard might have had a nose. We'll have to see what iRacing timing and scoring says. And see just right there, I think Smith there was expecting the 22 of Bruce Pierce to be much further up the track, and he just was not. That's how they get collected, and that's going to hurt Kurt Smith's run. He was running 5th.
Now see right there, that's a full lane down, mind you. And
22 looks loose there coming off the corner, so he might have got on the gas there too hard on exit.
absolutely. But you are right, J.R. Shepard with the scoring loops was a nose ahead of Menda. Shepard is in the race lead.
Well, that's not what you want to see if you're Menda. I talked about before the race those mistimed cautions. And for Menda now, he's going to have to not only try to fight against J.R. Shepard on the outside, but more than likely he will also have to fight Kenny Kibby, potentially Brian Dean, and the subsequent rows behind him, trying to fight them off being stuck in this outside lane. So after running for about 35 laps up front in that pole position, he's going to have to find some magic here on the outside lane.
What do you do then to make sure you find that magic? Because Kibby found some of it, Shepard was finding some of it. What do you think Jason needs to do to be able to get his own magic?
Well, that's part of the problem, is that he didn't really get to see what they did. He's focusing on his own line, so he probably didn't get to see what those two drivers were able to do to stay door to door. So unless you practice this, I mean, I don't practice starting on the outside often. So once you're coming off that corner, and reminder, these are still very cold tires. I don't know how much heat that these drivers have really been able to put into these tires. And we saw lap one how difficult it was to really blitz those corners from the outside lane specifically even. So this is going to be tough to have the right amount of momentum going into turn one without looping that car around with no practice. He's going to have to do something completely different than he's been doing all race.
On a go signal this time, 60 laps to go, a majority of which have been run under caution so far. See if we can get a long green flag run this time. Shepard off and away. Menda trying to provide pressure, not able to keep it side by side though into turns 1 and 2. Here comes Kibby on the inside.
Door to door, Menda in that 45. Tried to squeeze just a little bit, going to lose too much momentum though. Looks like he will be able to slide into that third position. Justin Morton though, falling back to fifth here on this restart. Now just trying to find a gap in front of Kurt Smith, and he'll get it off of turn 2.
And look who's back up at the front too. Dean, after being involved in one of the first caution flags of the race, has worked his way back up to fourth position after all the attrition for the rest of the pack. Has been able to stay out of trouble. New quickest lap though goes to Kenny Kibby by about a full tenth of a second as the battle for the lead is intensifying in this group. And just like that, the caution is out. Seneca and Belkey.
Now Menda's back on the inside.
Now this is going to be interesting too, since this would get changed low. Back on the lead lap. You see Belkey with the dodge, the 61 with the spin.
How about the maneuvering with the 24 today? That is his second check your pants kind of moment here at Southern National. Little bit of contact there with Steven Speeds to send the 61 car around.
And curious of what was going on. Yeah, you can see there was actually some contact too before that caused some problems that were pretty substantial to Joe Segala's car as well.
And that 81 car is starting to look like a demo derby machine now. This makes a little bit of contact, and honestly lucky that the 61 didn't get looped around there. And suspension problems on the 81. And then just getting used up. That 61 machine just getting used up that entire lap. And yeah, 81 car's all good. I don't know where you're coming.
The virtual trackside bar and grill car, able to get itself stabilized. You have to wonder what kind of damage can be caused on the underneath for these cars on the under trays, especially when you're scraping them like that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the new damage model as well. I was about to say so realistic, but that last caution was a little bit unrealistic. But in terms of how sheet metal falls off the car, like on the back side of the 81, that's pretty realistic, how the front bumper comes off. So yeah, Justin, that's a good point. I would like to know that, because that can cause suspension issues or drag issues as well.
Absolutely, especially we've seen it where you hit the nose hard enough, it ends up slamming the nose down and causes problems. But for J.R. Shepard, Kenny Kibby now to his outside. Green flag's out. Back and away, 52 laps to go.
A good jump further back for Steven Speed, shooting the gap 3 wide there. And that was all the way back for the 8th position. That is the provisional pole for next week. just able to slide his way through, and he has a little bit of front end damage as well. But meanwhile, up front, J.R. Shepard able to have a little bit of a gap here on Kibby.
Separation is 0.3 of a second. Jason Menda settled into third. Justin Morton's up to fourth spot. Keep in mind that all drivers are now in the lead lap, including James Lowe, who is back in 17th position with a fresh car.
And believe it or not, we just passed the halfway point, and now Kenny Kibby already trying to think of moves. He got right up on the rear bumper of that Ford. And now we'll eye another comeback there, and you have to wonder, J.R. Shepard did a good job last season at diving in these corners to get speed on exit. Who can do that here tonight to get around that 98 car?
Motorsports machine has been having a stellar campaign once more. 3 victories so far. His average finish is best in the series in third. Caution is out again, though. It's Mike Allen in the 59 once again.
But these guys are just having issues with car control there in the corners, trying to push the limit as far as it can. It just has not worked out for a number of drivers tonight. This is battling back in about the 12th position. Watch that white and blue number 59 car go into turn number 1. Allen just drives in just a little bit too deep, a little bit too hard, and there's nothing that little drill behind him can do.
And poor Cohen as well, getting bounced around in the shock of seeing another spin. But on that note, we're under caution with 45 laps to go. And I'm interested to see how far James Lowe can go. If he's able to dodge all of this attrition here, he's up to 15th now.
Yeah, if these cautions slow down, he restarts 15th. We'll go green with maybe 41 to go or so. James Lowe with an opportunity starting on the inside here to try to pick his way through traffic. Honestly, if you're James Lowe having to start this far back so late in the race, I think that you're just happy getting a 7 or 8, which will put you on the front row for next week.
It would still lose him some ground that he had vitally picked up the previous round, though. That's the main thing for the chance for the championship.
Absolutely, and when you're so tight with Shepard, Kibby, and Morton, and they're obviously running so well right now, unless some horrific accident, again, happens to either of them, you're going to lose points tonight. So we'll see. I've seen crazier, but it's going to be a tough climb up here in just 42, 43 laps.
43 laps to go this time by. Pace car is off. Shepard is on. A great launch for the 98. He tries to defend. Oh, well, Kenny Kibby is also already back single file. Justin Morton pressurizing Jason Menda behind him.
Menda just not able to go on that restart. Now battling door to door with Justin Morton. Gets a little bit of speed there on that outside, and just like that, the 9 machine takes over P3.
Gonna make the move, and another caution flag is out, and it's another parking garage. Harden, Jewel, James Lowe, and several others.
And you're correct on that. So parking garages, we are now multiple levels up. It's not just a parking lot anymore. Joe Segala here in the red number 81 and still has that rear bumper just hanging. We'll watch him here going into one because this one involved a lot of drivers in the back.
There's the first level. Second level stacks up there. Then the third level, eventually, seeing some of these cars, as we've seen, migrate down the track like so. Back down the ramp, and off and away. So several drivers involved. Let's take a look here. At least 5 cars with damage.
That was an interesting contact there between the 44 Jeffrey Harden and Joe Segala. It almost looked like, oh yeah, there's level 4.
Yes, it is. Now let's see what happened here. This is Jeffrey Harden who loses control, and it hits the poor cone. James Lowe has to lock up the brakes.
And I think the 44 there might have just tried to get on the gas too early. And again, that's been a kryptonite for so many drivers tonight, is getting on the gas early in the corner and looping it around on exit. And now Jason Menda gets stuck in 4th. I was hoping we could get a 5th place finish here off of the former firefighter, but this is going to be a tough battle for him outside of row 2.
Especially with how tonight's gone, but Ray 1 to go signal, and Austin Bumke has lost a lap. He could not get his car fixed in time. Get back on the racetrack, you'll have to be the first and only driver 1 lap down. Harden and Wolfson Now 3 laps down respectively. Harden official race as well. Green flag is back at the stand. More of a slower start. J.R. Shepard able to get clear. To second, though, for the battle goes Justin Morton.
Opportunity to take over P2 from Kenny Kibby and fight with J.R. Shepard for that lead. Sparks flies that 23 car, has a little bit of issues there with that right front, but he's all good.
Everybody's sparking these cars tonight. As now Kibby tries to get himself a hole. Dean, though, says, I'm going to take that one to the bottom side. Side by side now for third position as the 14 machine stuck him on top.
And this is something that we have not seen tonight, not receiving a hole very quickly there to jump down into. And just like that, Brian Dean hooks it a little hot into 3. He's going to lose a bulk of positions.
Sometimes the hole magically opens. In that case, Dean slid up and magically gave it to Kenny Kibby, and now is in the fight for the inversion spots. All the way back in a battle for 6th spot with Adam Shane. Kurt Smith is in 8th position at the moment with significant damage.
How about Steven Speed for Ryan on board the tail of him? He had a great finish last week in Nashville, and now looking to pick up another top 5 in back-to-back weeks.
Absolutely. And that would be pretty strong for him. Remember, was very happy with his podium finish last week in Nashville. Currently having another strong run tonight. Has kept the car fairly clean in that 55 machine. Of note, Dean is now under attack for 7th by Kurt Smith and has still lost the bottom as well.
This is tough, just over-baking it just a smidge there in 3, forced him to slide up, and is still paying the consequences for it. Now back into 8th. If you're in 8th, you want to finish 8th or better because that is either the provisional pole in 8th, or if you finish 9th, that's the provisional 9th starting spot. So there's an 8-spot difference between just one spot here that Brian Dean is trying to shield off.
Don't forget, James Lowe is still in the midst of this fighting too. He's in 11th position, trying to pass Mike Allen for 10th spot just behind him as well. He's coming in fairly quickly, turning 15 threes at the moment with the traffic. The leaders in clean space, 14 nines and 14 eights.
That move right there puts Lowe into the top 10. Still doesn't do much for him. Got to pick up at least 2 more to get that provisional pole and still trying to chop away some points. But out front, J.R. Shepard extending his lead now over half a second on Justin Morton. And Kenny Kibby just looks out of this battle now for the lead.
Kibby has indeed fallen off. Do you think that's because of how many laps he had to push on the high side early on, you feel?
I would have to think, because when you look at the 98, I mean, we talk about how this is a race of attrition. How much attrition did the 98 actually have in this race? And with the lack of battles, you're able to save up that right front, not really doing anything with it. And the 14 car had to fend off a number of drivers and start further back. So I don't know. That's really the only thing that I can explain it with, because we know that Kenny Kibby has the speed.
The only damage Shepard has is a little bit on the door. Other than that, his car has been kept clean throughout this entire night. But keep in mind, Morton is slowly but surely closing. He's running his best race in months here.
Justin Morton, just one of a few drivers to ever win here in the Bootleg Racing League. I'm pretty sure we're still just 4 all-time winners, and Morton still looking for win number 1 in this season. And beating James Lowe today would put him back into the top 3 and close up that 10-point gap between him and J.R. Shepard.
See, he's still a little bit on that back end tire a lot on both entry and exit. That's been a weak spot in some of these tracks. But tonight, with how many cautions there's been, it's been almost towards his direction, because he hasn't needed to necessarily prepare for that long run where that back tire falls off.
They'll see him here on exit. You see how much he's turning that car to the right. We love watching Morton on Friday nights in the Dirt Street Stock Series, also here on GSRC. And I often say, out of all these drivers, he's the guy who dirt tracks the most with that wheel to the right. And at least right now, it seems to be working for him.
Now within 0.2 of a second or so of J.R. Shepard, under 20 laps to go, lap traffic for the first time. That's Ryan Seneca, who moves out of the way in the 61 machine up the racetrack. So that clean space for a good portion of time, and that changes because Bruce Pearson's around. last car on the lead lap brings us under caution. It's Pearson.
This could be a game changer for James Lowe, who's in the 9th position, so he will restart on the inside lane. We'll watch back here, the black and green number 22 here. Right behind him is the 59 of Mike Allen, coming off of 4 nearly side by side, flying into turn number 1. And the 22, I don't know if he checked up there, maybe was just trying to save some tires, getting back on the gas, but that little bit of a nudge. These Arca Menards categorized cars, they do not like when a front bumper touches the rear bumper.
So you take a look and, wow. Guess there's more confidence in Allen in the corner compared to what we've seen from Bruce Pearson. Pearson had to back it up, as you were saying, yeah.
And depending on what it is, that could even be your confidence in your right front. Did I burn off enough? Well, then I need to calm down.
Well, Mike Allen is out of the race because of that too, by the way, since that was more front and nose damage to his car. He, Chris Wilson, Jeffrey Harden are your DNFs at the moment with under 15 laps to go. Lucky dog would be Ryan Seneca. That gets him back to the lead lap. Only Austin Belke 1 lap down. But now it gets fun. How do you try and make the move here with this many laps to go if you want to win this? Whether you are Morton, Kibby, or even Spees, who's up to 4th.
Well, Justin Morton has his best opportunity to pass J.R. Shepard. We saw both Shepard and Kibby have great launches from that outside pole position. So can he make this count here, stick door to door with J.R. Shepard? I don't know if he make the pass on the outside, though, or not.
Sure yet either. We'll have to see. We've seen drivers attempt it. We haven't seen anyone clear yet. Green flags out. J.R. Shepard uses the bank into his advantage, and it's a ramp into turn 1. Justin Morton, though, tries to keep it to the quarter panel. Kibby watches as Morton slides up the racetrack. The 9 tries to make the pump, can't get there.
Right up on the rear bumper, the 98 Ford. Morton still has a chance, blows up on the rear bumper. What has he learned in these first 87 laps that he might be able to use to gain momentum off of turn number 4?
Getting very close once again, nearly a quarter of a car length difference. James Lowe as well has moved his way into the battle for the top 8. Morton still trying to move his way to the race lead. 10 laps to go this time, still single file.
Right there, you can see where the bumper is. It's so close yet so far away. Not enough room to gain momentum and get inside of the 98 machine. Oh, trouble behind him. That's Steven Spees.
Spees lost it off at turn 2. That forces 3-1 in the battle behind them. This is the battle for the inversion spot. James Lowe now trying to hold on to 8th to move to 7th. That's Adam Shane in the 65 trying to hold on to the outside line.
For James Lowe, it's more than just the provisional pole in this invert. It's about gaining every single point that he can after winning last week to keep him in this championship hunt in that red number 99.
And that's where he's been able to now move himself to 7th to gain some more valuable points because of that situation with Spees. Spees is back in 5th position as a result. Kurt Smith is the next car up for grabs for the 99 if he can try and make the move. The next 6.5 laps, all one of the leaders have separated back up to about 0.25 seconds.
And that mistake by Spees opened the door for Jason Menda to get back into the 4th position with some room. But up front, J.R. Shepard still trying to hold off Justin Morton. It's just not quite enough room there for Morton to make any moves on corner exit, though.
Approaching the point of no return as well is now on board with Morton. Still a little bit shaky into the corners, trying to get to the 98th back bumper. Separated by a couple 100s last time by the lap times, this time by separated by another couple 100s. Morton a little bit quicker last time, 3.5 to go.
But it's just not going to matter if Morton cannot find a way to get to that left rear quarter panel, not make contact or anything, just to get there to force J.R. Shepard to use the outside. Just touching the bottom of the apron and have to save it, and he's going to lose valuable time there, Justin.
That might have cost him 2 laps to go. He needs a mistake for J.R. Shepard to have a shot. That lost him about a couple tenths. A hard send, though, from Morton on the brakes.
Boy, and a mistake from J.R. Shepard only comes once in a blue moon, and the blue moon was on a weekday about a week ago or so I don't see one coming up here.
Final lap. White flag is out from Southern National Motorsports Park. J.R. Shepard looking to hold on for one more set of corners again. For the fourth time this season, J.R. Shepard wins in the BRL's Grand National Series. Morton second, Kibby in third.
All the way back in that transfer spot, James Lowe was only able to get up to 7th. So while that will put him for sure on the front row next week, he loses valuable points after that win last week.
And for Shepard, it just continues the trend of seeing him be able to have some luck in times, but also have the speed to be able to back up that luck once he gets some positioning. And guess what? He was able to take advantage of some spins and some of the scoring loops in turn tonight, Devin, to be able to help propel him to this win.
Whatever it takes, riding just that little bit of a nose in front of Jason Menda, who finished 4th tonight, on one caution to give him P1, and there was just not anyone else in the field who could challenge from that outside position.
Post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel from the virtual Southern National Motorsports Park. Welcome back to the virtual Southern National Motorsports Park for coverage of the Bootleg Racing League's Grand National Series, where it was J.R. Shepard who took home the victory at more than 0.3 of a second tonight over Justin Morton. Kenny Kibby rounded out the top 3. We'll be speaking with those drivers in just a few moments. Jason Menda, Steven Spies, Kurt Smith, James Lowe, and Brian Dean rounded out the inversion spots. Dean on the provisional poll for next week. A paperclip. Adam Shane and Joe Sagallo rounded out their top 10, Devin.
Bull Jewel brings it home in 11th. Ryan Seneker in 12th. Bruce Pearson brings it home in 13th. Austin Belke, the first car, one lap down. And DNFs tonight from Mike Allen, Jeffrey Harden, and Chris Wolfson. Your 17-car field here at Southern National Motorsports Park.
Once again, it's J.R. Shepard who takes home another victory in this series. And J.R., this time you had to work for it for some time with some of the attrition early on. How are you feeling about your race tonight?
Extremely surprised more than anything. This is it's been a tough track for me here in the past, and I'm making contact with that one incident early on. I had people telling me that my left front was kind of sticking out or rubbing a little bit, so I was worried about that with the way that the damage model is on these cars. Wasn't sure if that tire was going to blow out or not, but yeah, just really surprised.
That's interesting, since you have previously won in season 1, 2, and 4 here at this racetrack. what makes it such a difficult one, in your opinion, for not just you, but for the others tonight, as we trended towards the attrition style race tonight in the caution flag account?
Yeah, this track's really tough because it's such a sharp radius corner type track, and you have banking to help you out there, but if you overdrive the entry of the corner, the car really pushes through the center, and your instinct tells you need to get back to the throttle early, and then the rear end comes around because you do that push loose type thing. So it's really tough. You got to learn to be patient here and take what the car will give you.
Next race is one where if you didn't bump fenders here, you're likely going to do it there. It's Martinsville Speedway. Your thoughts on going to the paperclip next?
Not feeling good about finishing first because that means I'll have to start on the outside there next week. But that's going to be a track where you got to be patient, but aggressive when things single out a little bit. So hopefully we'll be able to find a good line and be able to race our way through there.
Anyone you want to thank for the run tonight?
Yeah, just thanks to the Bootleg Racing League for allowing us to do this on Saturday nights. And I haven't got to publicly say it. I've done it privately, but apologize to Kenny for last week's incident. Just a real bad misjudgment on my part. And he's got a lot of people that watch him on his streams and a lot of family and friends that watch him too. So I know that they were disappointed with that. And I really apologize for that. Didn't mess up the points, I don't think, too bad. But yeah, just hated to see that because he deserved that win.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you, guys.
J.R. Shepard, your race winner tonight, 65 laps led in a 10 caution, 48 caution lap event this evening. Now, second place tonight went to Justin Morton, one of his best runs in the past couple seasons. He's with Devin Henry.
Yeah, Justin Morton bringing it home in second today. Lots of cautions for you, Justin. But in terms of trying to get to JR and make that pass, what else did you need? You were right up on that rear bumper, and it looked like just one clip of the apron is what decided that race for you.
Yeah, I knew once I made that mistake, it was going to be over for me. But I did get back to him. I kept trying. Actually spun out crossing the line. I was trying so hard. I just needed him to make a big mistake for me to have a chance, or I think I needed to be on his door on that last restart to have a chance.
Well, yeah, it was pretty obvious that you put it all out there tonight trying to get to that 98 machine. But next week is a track that I would think that you like, Martinsville. You've won here in this league before in the Grand National Series. So looking ahead to next week, a second place tonight, what can you do to try to get back to another victory and close up this points gap even just a little bit more?
Yeah, I think Martinsville is one of my better tracks. It's probably my favorite oval to run. So I think that's going for me that direction. Just need to be consistent to get by JR and just be better than him, I guess.
Well, nonetheless, still put on a show tonight, bringing it home in P2. Who do you have to thank for a podium finish tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to thank my team, Total Downforce Racing, Pixel Dust. I'd like to thank my teammate, Niall Gagan, who ran with me during M-Tech today. We had an unfortunate end of that, but it's still great to run that kind of stuff. Thanks, Lowell, for running this amazing league and everybody who runs it, and thank you guys for doing the broadcast.
Justin Morton bringing it home in P2. Well, now let's go ahead and send it back to Justin. He's caught up with Kenny Kibby.
Yes, indeed, Kenny. First things first, you were a contender throughout the night. Try to get the top line to work after you were able to avoid the carnage that was lap one, turn one, and then fell back to third. What happened to the tires?
Yeah, it was just a product of starting on the high side. You really just couldn't make anything happen there. You can fight to kind of retain your position, but it's really hard to play offense. And just that one restart where we got a decent run, I just couldn't find a hole to slip down to the bottom lane. And I knew I was a little bit in trouble that restart because Justin was third that time, and I know he's pretty strong on the restarts. So, he was there, and then I knew I was going to have to fight just to get back in line. And staying up top like that for as long as I did didn't do my tires any favors. Our tire wear wasn't bad because we didn't really have that much green flag running, but probably heated my tires up at least worse than some of the guys around me at the time, and just put us in some bad track position there later on.
Now, of course, on the bright side, your positioning gets you to the bottom for the next race, and the reason it's critical, it's Martinsville. Your thoughts going there, where the fenders are likely going to be flying into the sky, and all of the cones will likely be all over the place trying to pick up the fenders.
Yeah, well, we got a win there last season. Hopefully we can do that again. Yeah, it's going to kind of be about track position, getting back to that bottom line, and trying to not run over the guy in front of you and not get run over at the same time. So hopefully we can get lucky like we did this time and escape carnage if there is any there, and get to the front, and got to start pointing our way back up to this points lead. A little bit frustrated that we lost some points on JR tonight. He ran a good race. Just wanted to have more green flag laps and see if we could do anything with them there later on. But yeah, hopefully we can go to Martinsville and have a stronger, cleaner run next week.
Anyone you want to thank for the run tonight?
Yeah, just everybody at the Bootleg Racing League. And shout out to Justin Morton for a good, strong run. I was kind of rooting for him there at the end, seeing what he could do with the leader. But kudos also to JR on a good race. And shout out to my buddy Brandon for the new paint scheme that we ran tonight. Looked pretty good. So, and thanks to Global SimRacing Channel for the broadcast, as always.
There's the context for the blue. Congratulations on the run. Kenny Kibby coming home in third. Like to thank him, Justin Morton, and J.R. Shepard for taking on to speak with us. All those drivers had to work from 8th on back tonight. Your final thoughts on this one, Devin?
Well, obviously, it got a little bit crazy, and that brings up the question, so what will we see at Martinsville now? But probably the biggest question on my mind when we go next week to Martinsville is the fact that James Lowe will be starting so far up front, while the other championship competitors will be further back in the invert. So James Lowe will start the race with the target on his back, much like he did tonight in a different way, I guess. But yeah, it's going to be a fun one here for James Lowe as he will try to hold off his other 3 championship competitors at Martinsville.
Absolutely. It's going to also be a part of the Moonshine Challenge. We'll discuss that when we get to that action. But we'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's action from the virtual Southern National Motorsports Park. We'd also like to thank the Bootleg Racing League for organizing this exciting series and the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcasts listed up on screen. Additional thanks go to Jude Lowana, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of our great work. Thanks to the team today, as well as Devin and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check our merchandise for sale at gsrc.stormyy.com. Or you can check our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss a moment here at the Global SimRacing Channel. As talked about, the next race goes to Martinsville Speedway. Coverage starts at approximately 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. Green flag scheduled for 9:05 p.m. Be sure to tune in for the Moonshine Challenge to see who will be able to score some valuable points for the second race of that mini season. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on screen, so be sure to check those out as well and mark them down in your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.